For centuries, money was backed by metal, then by governments, now it's backed by math. But what happens when people stop believing the math? When inflation data feels fake? When debt ceilings keep rising? When every solution is just more printing? At some point, people stop checking the numbers. They check their instincts. And when instinct says something's wrong, confidence disappears faster than currency ever could. That's when empires fall, not when they default, but when their citizens stop believing the math adds up. The next financial collapse won't begin with a bank run or a market crash. It will begin with disbelief, a quiet psychological run on trust. Because money isn't metal, paper, or even code. It's belief, quantified. From the Roman denarius to Weimar's mark to the modern dollar. Every currency in history has shared one foundation: faith. Faith that tomorrow the value will still be there. Faith that what you hold will buy what you need. Faith that the system still works. But once that faith cracks, the rest collapses on its own. Today, the world is drowning in data but starving for belief. We have GDP, CPI, M2, numbers that say growth while people feel decline. That disconnect is the start of every collapse of money, because before money dies on paper, it dies in the mind. Every civilization has built its economy on belief. The materials change, but the story never does. In ancient Rome, the denarius was pure silver. Each coin carried Caesar's face and the promise of value. But as wars emptied the treasury, the modern world runs on faith in numbers. Interest rates, inflation targets, employment figures, statistics that promise order in a chaotic economy. But what happens when people stop believing those numbers are real? After the 2008 crash, governments rescued banks with printed money. They called it quantitative easing, a technical phrase hiding a simple truth. The system survived only because we chose to believe it should. Markets recovered, stocks soared. But ordinary people noticed something had shifted. The rules no longer felt consistent. Profit came from speculation, not production. Debt no longer felt dangerous. Then came the pandemic. Trillions were created overnight, and the world called it stimulus. That's when the psychology of inflation returned. The money supply expanded, but so did doubt. When reality no longer matches the math, trust fractures. The official CPI says 3%. Your grocery bill says otherwise. Unemployment data says recovery. Your friends say they're working 2 jobs. It's not the number that kills confidence. It's the gap between the number and your life. That's how faith dies in the modern age. Not from panic, but from quiet disbelief. Once disbelief spreads far enough, even truth sounds suspicious. People stop trusting central banks, then media, then markets themselves. They search for anchors, gold, crypto, land, anything real. Because when they stop trusting official math, they start building their own. That's how civilizations lose consensus reality. The data keeps flowing, but no one believes it. Policy stops working because you can't steer an economy that no one trusts. Faith once lived in the central banks. Now it lives in message boards, hashtags, and private chats where people rewrite their own definitions of value. The collapse of trust has already begun. It isn't financial, it's psychological. Every financial collapse begins the same way. The math still works, but the people don't. In 1929, balance sheets looked fine until fear took hold. In 1997, Asia's numbers were strong until confidence vanished overnight. In 2008, every model said contained. Then the models collapsed because belief did. The next collapse of money won't start with a bank run. It will start in the mind. Economists have a new term for it, a faith run. Not a run on banks, a run on belief. When citizens lose trust in money, they reach for anything else that feels real. Gold spikes, crypto surges, real estate inflates, each becomes a refuge from doubt. Governments respond with the only tool they have: more promises, more debt, more guarantees, more words. But words can't restore faith once it's gone. Trust isn't a switch you flip. It's a story you tell, and the world no longer believes the old story. That's what makes the next collapse different. It won't be a liquidity crisis or a debt spiral. It will be a confidence crisis, a moment when humanity realizes that money, data, and policy are only as strong as the belief behind them. You'll know it's here not when banks close, but when belief does. When people start questioning not just prices, but value itself. When work feels disconnected from reward. When saving feels pointless because the rules keep changing. That's not economics. That's the psychology of inflation turning into the psychology of collapse. It's already visible in empty offices and overvalued markets, in speculative manias that pretend to be innovation, and in the quiet doubt of workers watching their purchasing power shrink. Every graph still points upward, But faith, the invisible line that holds it together, is bending down. Empires don't fall when they run out of money. They fall when they run out of believers. Every generation believes their money is different, more advanced, more stable, more permanent. But the truth never changes. Money is not metal, paper, or pixels. It's a shared story, and every story depends on belief. We tell ourselves we're smarter now. We have central banks, digital ledgers, and complex algorithms that promise control. But the numbers have grown so vast, so abstract, that even the people who designed them no longer understand their consequences. In a world of digital reserves and programmable money, trust has migrated from gold and government to something far more fragile: code. And code, like confidence, can break. Every empire has its faith. Rome had silver, Weimar had paper, America had the dollar. Ours is data. But when data becomes doubt, when people start asking not what is it worth, but why does it still work? That's when systems end quietly, not violently, not with fire, but with silence, a slow surrender of belief. The next financial collapse may not look like 1929 or 2008. There might be no panic, no crash, just a slow evaporation of meaning, an age where numbers rise but value fades, where growth continues yet prosperity disappears, where citizens still spend, still save, still work, but somehow it all feels hollow. That's what happens when trust in money fades faster than the inflation. When societies keep functioning out of habit, not conviction. The collapse of belief is the quietest crisis of all, because when it arrives, there's nothing left to measure. No charts, no debt ceilings, no interest rates, only silence. And the question, what do we believe in now? Belief built the system, and when belief fades, the system cracks. But not every collapse begins in government halls or central banks. Some begin in boardrooms, where ambition turns to arrogance and numbers become fiction. Because behind every chart, every crisis, every collapse, there's a story of people who thought they were too smart to fail, of empires built not on truth, but on trust abused. In our next story, we leave nations behind and step inside the companies that defined them, the ones that sold confidence instead of products, the ones that turned faith into fraud,